Sairam to everyone. We will start with prayer. Om Saishwaraya Vidmahe Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Offering our humble pranams at Bhagavan's lotus feet, respected Professor Prakya sir, faculty members, external examiners, Professor Soumya Shivakumar, Professor Dr. Chandrasekhar, our guide of the defense candidate today, Dr. Sai Manohar, other faculty members, visiting faculty members. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you for today's defense Viva of Mrs. Akanksha Aggarwal, shortly Dr. Akanksha Aggarwal. It's a pleasure that we are having this defense presentation and Viva at the Brindavan campus. To introduce Dr. Srinivas Prakya, our external examiner of today. He is a long-standing professor and researcher in the area of marketing, currently a professor in the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. He has also been long time, he has been associated with the institute. He has been helping us on many fronts. We take this opportunity to specially welcome you, sir. It is now my pleasure to invite the guide, Dr. Sai Manohar, to introduce the candidate and request the candidate to take over. Dr. Sai Manohar.
Thank you, sir. Once again, I welcome you all for this PhD Defense Viva examination of Mrs. Akanksha Aggarwal. Mrs. Akanksha Aggarwal is an assistant professor in the Department of Management and Commerce at the Anantapur campus of Svetsa Institute of Higher Learning. She joined the institute in June 2013 and has been teaching for 11 years. She has taught various courses in BCom, BBA and MBA program. She has 4 UGC Care publications, of which one is also an ABDCD rank publication. She has 3 peer review publications and 9 conference proceedings and 2 best paper awards at international conferences. She is also an editor of book Futuristic Trends in Management, and also she is a reviewer at Sage and
Sairam. Every morning we wake up to news of this kind: deadly floods devastating states, rising temperatures, breaking new records. Global warming and climate change are no longer distant. They are right here in front of us. Our natural resources like land, water, and air are getting affected because of the climatic conditions. Over 90% of the population is breathing air which is full of pollutants more than the WHO's safety limits. The marine life is also suffering. Almost 1 million marine animals die each year due to the pollution in the oceans. The land is not left alone also. Almost 30% of the land has been degraded today, and it has impacted the biodiversity as well as the food security. This is all because of the high consumption lifestyles that we lead. An average American generates 4.5 pounds of waste every day, and most of it lands in the landfills. Shockingly, 40% of the food that is produced is actually wasted. And on the other hand, there is a society who have to scavenge for meeting their basic needs. These climatic conditions have increased 3 times since 1970s. So the question that we face today is weather whiplash our new normal? Om Shri Sai Ram. I offer myself at the divine lotus feet of Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba, respected Dean of Management and Commerce, respected external examiner, Director, Brindavan Campus, and my research supervisor, Dr. Sai Manohar, my joint research supervisor, Dr. Chandrasekhar, research advisor, Dr. Soumya Shivkumar, HOD, Department of Management and Commerce, senior faculty members, my dear colleagues, guests, and doctoral scholars who have taken out time today to attend this defense presentation. I welcome you all to my presentation. Today, I will be talking about my thesis titled Unveiling Sustainable Consumers in India, a Mixed Methods Approach to Understanding Motivations, Well-being, and Behaviors. This work has been supervised by Dr. Sai Manohar. My joint research supervisor is Dr. B. Chandrasekhar, and research advisor is Dr. Soumya Shivkumar. This is the outline of the research process that I have followed. Coming to the rationale of my work, the work is inspired by the Goal 12 of Sustainable Development Goals, where we have been asked, the businesses, the governments, the individuals have been asked to contribute to sustainable patterns of consumption and production. And my research focus is on one such stakeholder, which is the individual consumption behavior in a developing country like India, towards our journey towards sustainable consumption. The definition of sustainable consumption is taken from the Oslo Sustainable Consumption Symposium, where it is said that the use of products and services should be done in a manner so as to not only maintain the quality of life and meet the basic needs, but also not to harm the environment, not to generate waste and pollutants, and not to jeopardize the needs of future generations. This is the broader literature mind map that I have worked on. Because of want of time, I'm skipping this. However, I'm open to any questions in the question answer session. Coming to the gaps in literature, this area in sustainable consumption is still in its nascent stages. Most of the literature that exists comes from global north, and India, being a developing country, being the most populous country in the world, which is home to almost 18% of the world's population, and being rich in its culture, requires unique solutions relating to sustainability. Also, India is a risk-prone country exposed to several climatic conditions like cyclones, earthquakes, cloudbursts, to name a few. And when we talk about the human consumption behavior, this kind of behavior is a multifaceted behavior which is affected by the large complex factors, and these factors still remain underdeveloped in the literature. Also, when we ask people to move to sustainable patterns of consumption, the critics ask whether it can ensure well-being of the people. So these well-being implications still remain unknown, and as people are getting more aware about the things, they are moving to new patterns of consumption which still remain unexplored. So based on the research gaps, this is the research design which I have developed based on the Maxwell framework. I've used Maxwell framework as it is an interactive research design which adds to the rigor and clarity of the research and permits for refinement of questions after the findings are emerged. So the first research question that comes from the literature gap is, what factors affect sustainable consumer behavior in Indian context. The second one being, do spiritual beliefs of individuals, especially in India, influence the green consumption? Third research question is, what are the well-being implications of sustainable consumption? And the fourth is the large part of the qualitative study, which discusses how the Indian sustainable consumers can be understood. Aligned to these are the research objectives, and these research objectives, the first one, which is to understand the factors affecting Indian sustainable consumer behavior. This has been studied in context of theory of planned behavior, which is a largely accepted theory in the field of environmental behavior. The second research question is also based on the theory of planned behavior. The third research objective regarding happiness is studied from the field of positive psychology, adopting the theory of authentic happiness, which is given by Martin Seligman. The fourth research question about Indian sustainable consumers, the motivations of these consumers is studied from the self-determination theory perspective, and the sustainable practices are studied on the basis of 9 hours of circular economy and 5 hours of zero waste. Suitable to these research questions and research objectives was a convergent parallel mixed method research design, where qualitative as well as quantitative research is conducted and the results are compared and analyzed together, and integrated findings are emerged. The validity of the study is ensured by triangulation, the qualitative and quantitative findings. And before conducting the research, pilot studies were conducted. Participants were purposefully and carefully selected, and several statistical validity measures have been ensured. Coming to the factors that were considered in this study, given that human behavior is affected by the different contexts in which it happens, the first factor is the social factor. This has been operationalized as collectivism, peer influence, family, role, and status. Man-nature orientation is studied as rights and justice of man, animals, and society. The market factors are studied as green communication, advertising, green messaging, green trust, and brand image. The individual factors are plenty. The cognitive factors are studied as the beliefs, value expectations, environmental awareness, and environmental knowledge. The psychological factors are studied as the perceptions, spiritual morals, environmental concern, skepticism, and the affective component is studied by study of well-being, happiness, and through the study of attitudes. Behavioral component is studied as green purchase intention and willingness to purchase. Demographic factors are studied as age, income, education, gender, location, and occupation. And the way of living is studied as lifestyle and personality. So coming to the first research question, what factors determine sustainable behavior with regard to consumption in Indian context? Here the objective was to find the factors that affect sustainable consumption in India. So here an online questionnaire was administered and 351 responses were generated, of which were analyzed using structural equation modeling. Here the covariance based structural equation modeling was used, as this is just a test of existing theory in Indian context, and therefore a covariance based structural equation modeling helped in presenting the rigor of the study and to ensure that the model fit is achieved and the theory is actually applicable in the Indian context. So what we found was that man-nature orientation, green communication, environmental concern, collectivism, and perceived consumer effectiveness affected the purchase intention of the consumers, which in turn affected the eco-conscious consumer behavior. This work was presented in an international conference which was held in St. Martin College of Engineering in Hyderabad. This work has also been published in a UGC Care journal, which is titled as Humanities and Social Science Studies. Coming to the second research question, India being a land of spirituality, do spiritual beliefs exert any influence on green consumption? So here spirituality is taken as one of the factors along with the other factors in order to study the impact of these factors on green consumption. So I would here like to draw upon why sustainability, spirituality and consumption are related. This is based on the literature which considers love, care, kindness, satisfaction, tolerance, spirit of accountability and acceptance of coexistence as the characteristics of spirituality. The spirituality can be expressed as one's relationship with oneself, one's relationship with the world, and one's relationship with the higher power. In the recent literature, mindfulness, sense of responsibility, and respect for nature is also considered as aspects of spirituality. However, this literature is not new to us. Indian ancient texts like Bhagavad Gita have said, the unreal has no being, the real never ceases to be. Here, the Bhagavad Gita tries to draw attention to the Nitya nature of Atman and the Anitya nature of the physical world, where it states that uh, the man has to make a choice between the long term benefits versus the short term immediate sensory pleasures, and based on that, he should make a distinction when it comes to his consumption choices. Also, similar thoughts are revealed in Katha Upanishad, where it says the wise man prefers the good to the pleasant, but the fool chooses pleasant for the sake of worldly gain. So, here the Upanishad tries to draw attention to the choice between the Shreyas and the Preyas, which is the good and the pleasant. So, in the context of sustainability, the good is something that has long lasting effect and which can ensure well being for the environment and the society. And the pleasant refers to the short term goals which give momentary happiness but are not long lasting. These ideas are not just coming from one culture, they are reflected in several other cultures also. In Buddhism, it is said that man should have the right intention, right action, and right livelihood, rather than indulgence in sensory pleasures for material wealth. Similar thing is said by Aristotle, where he said, a good life is one lived in virtue, temperance, wisdom, and justice, as against immediate pleasures. The Chinese philosophy also supports the argument by saying that man should live in harmony with nature's rhythms. The Christian philosophy also talks about humans as the caretakers of earth and bestows the responsibility on us to save the environment. So, given that the arguments played in the literature, there are no empirical evidences about spirituality and its connection to consumption. So, we take in this research study spirituality as one factor that affects consumption, and we came up with a questionnaire and administered it online, and 418 responses were generated. And what we found was that environmental concern, perceived consumer effectiveness, green peer influence, perceived environmental knowledge, and spirituality affected the attitudes of people towards green products, which in turn affected the green purchase intention, and that led to green purchase behavior. Here we have employed PLSM, as this study is exploratory in nature. In this study, we are not testing the existing theory, but actually trying to find new relationship, uncovering new theoretical connections, and therefore PLSM seems to be more appropriate in predictive modeling in this case. This work was presented in a 10th international conference held by Shaheed Bhagat Singh College in 2022. This work won Best Paper Award in the conference. The work has also been published in a UGC Care journal titled SDMIMD Journal of Management. Coming to the third research question, what are the well-being implications of sustainable consumption? The research objective here was to determine if sustainable consumption can ensure well-being, and the objective was to study happiness of sustainable consumers vis-a-vis non-sustainable consumers. So in this case, we identified two groups of consumers. We went to Facebook groups like Zero Waste Living, Zero Waste, Zero Judgment, Sustainable Living, Sustainable Indians, and we reached out to these people who were actively engaged in these groups. And on the other hand, we went to other set of groups like Backpackers and Travelers of India, Girls That Run, and Interior Design Ideas, and alike. So these two groups were taken as both of the groups represented a similar zeal towards life, and they had a sense of purpose. And these people were constantly engaging in these Facebook groups, and the data was collected from them on the happiness. And when we compared the results, we found that the sustainable consumers scored higher on all the dimensions of happiness: the pleasant life, the good life, and the meaningful life. And also on the overall dimension of happiness, the sustainable group scored higher average happiness points as compared to the non-sustainable group. So this work was presented in prestigious global, one of the oldest societies of social sciences, which is the Southwest Social Science Association. The work was presented in their 100th annual meeting. This was presented in New Orleans during the COVID time. And this work is in Scopus Q1 journal. It is under second revision right now. Coming to the last research question, the research question was, how can we understand the new sustainable consumer who is coming up these days? So here we have found that there is a new trend where people are adopting sustainable lifestyles, and sustainability influencers have come up on social media. And we reached out to these sustainability influencers who are very active on different social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And most of the data was collected from Gen Z and millennials. However, we have not left out any age group. This study was qualitative in nature, and here we had 5 objectives. The first objective was to explore the moments of truth. That is, when was the turning point for these people when they actually started living sustainable lifestyles. And what we found was that the groups could be divided into 2 categories: the older generation and the younger generation. The older generation was inspired by their cultural upbringing, by their drive to lead minimalistic lifestyles, and by their drive to lead spiritual journeys. And whereas the younger generation had a high risk perception, which means they feared the impending climate change, and because of that, they were doing very actively engaging in sustainable activities. Here, I would like you to hear directly from the respondents.
The first exposure towards environmental sustainability that I got was from the plastic waste that we find in tourist spots, basically. We started with cleaning campaigns. We also did a couple of beach cleanups and stuff.
I suffer from eco-anxiety, and I fear that my child, who's 12 years old, he may have money in the future, but he may not have a clean environment to live in.
तो शुरू से मैंने देखा कि मेरे को ना वीडियोस बहुत मोटिवेट करते हैं. मैंने एक वीडियो देखा अमेज़न फॉरेस्ट फायर पर. अभी एंड न्यू ने मेरे को वो वीडियो शेयर किया था जब वो अपने शुरू के स्टेज में थे, तो वो शेयर कर रहे थे वीडियोस कुछ लोगों को. तो आई वाज टू लकी टू बी वन ऑफ देम, बिकॉज आज तो वो मिलियंस में पहुंच गए हैं, उनके फॉलोअर्स एंड उनकी रीच आउट बहुत अच्छा हो गया. तो जब उन्होंने वीडियो शेयर किया, वीडियो से अवेयर होकर पेड़ लगाना शुरू कर दिए. ऐसे लाइक माइंडेड लोग जुड़ते गए जिनका बिल्कुल सस्टेनेबल लाइफस्टाइल फॉलो करने का मोटिव रहा है और वो करते आए हैं या उन्होंने अभी शुरू किया. तो उनमें से किसी ने शेयर किया वीडियो प्लास्टिक के बारे में. तो आई वाज़न्ट अवेयर कि प्लास्टिक इतना बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. तो व्हेन आई हर्ड अबाउट प्लास्टिक की अराउंड 10 मिलियन एक्वेटिक एनिमल्स डाई ईच ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ प्लास्टिक, एंड टेरेस्ट्रियल एनिमल्स का तो भी पता नहीं कितने मरते होंगे, तो बहुत ही दिल को ठेस पहुंची.
I started working for water conservation in 2015. If you remember, it had not rained in the entire India. That year, Mr. Devendra Fadnavis had sent these trains to Latur and all these districts. So there were water trains. And the whole of India, there was not a single state which had not suffered. And I realized that nobody is doing anything about it. There was a point where the extra money also which I had, when I went to the tanker guy, he said that there is no water. From next week, we will not be able to produce water because we only don't have water. So I realized the money that I'm earning through practicing or through working outside is not able to buy me the basic need of humans, that's water. The seed for sustainable living started in my Bal Vikas days when we all did seeding on desires. When we were little children, we were told to exercise seeding on desires, saving energy, time, money, etc. I think it kind of became inherent from there, one. Second, I feel in today's highly consumerist society and materialistic world, people live beyond their means just to keep up with the Joneses, as they call it.
So here we can see that the people shared a huge sense of connection with nature, and when they actually went on travel and they
The
saw
first exposure towards environmental.
I suffer from eco.
तो शुरू से मैंने
I started the seed for.
So when they went on these trips, they saw littering around in the tourist places. They were really taken back with that, and they thought that it is their time to make contribution to the world and their time to start living life more sustainably. Other reason was that when they saw that their children had breathing issues, asthma issues, or when they feared that in future my child might not have fresh air and fresh water for themselves, so they thought that we need to change things now in order to save them. Also, pandemic lockdowns gave them some time to think about the anthropocene effect that they are causing, and to take some steps to correct it. Also, these people were largely influenced by social media, and when they saw the videos, they would touch them and they would start taking some actions for that. And when people faced shortage of water or had difficulty in breathing, or when they faced the air pollution, they thought that it's time for them to do the thing which is necessary for the world. Apart from that, some people also mentioned about their spiritual lives that they have led, and how their family and culture has always supported them to live their lives more sustainably. And these ideas are not reflected in the literature at all. And therefore, these were the important findings from this research. The second research question objective was that what factors bring awareness to these people? How do they become aware about what needs to be done to save the earth? So what we found here is can be classified into these four categories. Here, the thickness of the line represents the number of times these words have been spoken. So most of the individuals mentioned about the family. They said that right from our upbringing, we have been told to share things with our cousins. Our clothes have been passed on generation. We have been told to turn off lights, turn off electricity, turn off water taps, and that's how we have been brought up all the time. So the family has played a huge role in influencing and shaping our sustainable behaviors. And also, some people mentioned about the experiences and learnings that they have had in their lives, the work they have done with some NGOs, the work that they do as CSR activities in their jobs, that has inspired them to adopt sustainable lifestyles. Several other mentioned about cultural sensitivity, as you have already heard in the previous slide. And the Gen Z, the younger lot, mentioned about the formal education, where in the schools they have been taught and sensitized about the environmental impact, and they were given research projects on this, and they were made to do some collective activities which have inspired them to move towards sustainable lifestyles. The youngest girl that we had interviewed was actually an 8-year-old girl who had given TED talk about what impact she has made, and she has written books on it, and what kind of activities she is doing. These days she is very popular on LinkedIn actually now. The other research objectives that were there were what are the motivations of these people that drive them to behave in sustainable manner, what are the challenges and barriers that they face, and what kind of sustainable practices do they do. So this can be explained in this framework. What we found was that there is something that drives these individuals, which makes their attitude towards sustainable behavior, and thus as a result of it they indulge in sustainable practices. However, their behaviors get affected by the trends and practices that exist in the society around them, and it also gets affected by the barriers that come midway. So, regarding motivation, we found that there are two types of motivations these people had: extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation was the collective empowerment, doing things together, the influence of the family and culture, and the influence of their workplaces, because of which they engaged in these activities. The intrinsic motivation came from recognition and validation that they received on their social media handles, a large number of comments and praises that they received, and also from the deeper sense of connection with nature, and from their parental stewardship, like they wanted to bring fresh air and water for their children in the future. Also, it helped them in their own personal health and well-being, and it was a self-fulfilling journey for them, which drove them to behave more sustainably. Regarding the attitudes, what we found was that these influencers were informed and purposeful. They were mindful and conscious of the choices that they make. They reflected diverse behaviors. They were technologically advanced, and they were very active on social media, and they shared a huge sense of connection with nature. The practices that they did could be classified as multiple R's. They refused whatever they did not need. They rejected unsustainable products. They tried to reduce their consumption and their desires. They tried to reuse things as much as possible. They tried to reproduce the seeds of the fruits and vegetables that came in. They tried to recycle products, and they tried to do composting at home. And these activities were actually affected by the social practices around them. For example, some of them had a saving mindset. So they believed in not increasing their consumption, but to reduce their consumption. They tried to live in the minimal things that they could. Whereas on the other hand, there were other set of people who had a consumption mindset, where they believed that we should fulfill all our desires, but in a manner that does not jeopardize the needs of the future generation. So they alternated their consumption with more sustainable products. Also, when practicing sustainability, these people underwent several barriers. Like, they had a lot of misconceptions regarding the understanding of the concepts of sustainability. Some believe that going sustainable requires high amount of funding, and then some had faced challenges regarding access to recycling facilities, access to platforms where they can exchange their clothing or return these goods. They also had to spend a lot of time in waste segregation, in making their own eco-friendly soaps and things like that. They also faced practical challenges, like some of them tried to compost their waste, but they failed at it. And they also faced a lot of social criticism, in the sense that one lady mentioned that she's so used to saving water that when some guests came home, she asked them to turn off the tap. And that brought in a lot of anger from the rest of the family, that you cannot treat your guests like this. And they also face some kind of resistance from peers. For example, somebody mentioned that I want to go cell phone free, but other people think of it as a nuisance in their lives, as they cannot reach out to me, and therefore I cannot go cell phone free. Some people mention that we want to carry our own plates to the malls, and we don't want to use the thermocol dispose of plates, and their friends do not consider it to be a social etiquette. And they also face challenges in maintaining these sustainable practices consistently over a period of time. This work was presented in the 16th Doctoral Conference, which was held by ICFI School of Social Sciences. This paper is under development. So when we combine the findings of both the qualitative and quantitative study, we found that there was a high environmental concern. We have found 0.7 correlation in the quantitative study, and we found like high risk perception and high regard for the environment through the Indian culture in the qualitative study. We also found a metaphysical connection that humans and nature share. So people believed, they had spiritual beliefs, and they had a natural love for the society and the environment and for the future generations. They wanted to be purposeful, they wanted to go beyond themselves, and they wanted to save the earth. Also, sustainable advocacy kept them motivated. They went to social media platforms and they consistently posted about good practices, and they felt themselves to be useful. They felt to be leading satisfied lives. It gave them some kind of affirmation, and it boosted their self-esteem. Sustainable activities were also used as a business opportunity, where some of the people were actually making eco-friendly products like soaps and shampoos, and they were selling these things. And they were also using their knowledge regarding sustainability as a platform for coaching to various organizations and all. And we also found that there was a very high risk perception about the impending climate change. People suffered from eco anxieties, and they were really afraid about what's going to happen. And many people mentioned that they are facing issues like breathing issues because of the pollutants in the air, and their children are getting asthma at a very young age. We also found that culture played a huge role, especially the Indian culture, in their upbringing and in their sustainable activities. They already had answers to how they can go more sustainable because of their Indian traditions and the natural practices that we have been following. Somebody mentioned about the glass jug in which the water is brought and for the guests, and only as much water is served as the guest requires, so as to not to waste the water. And similarly, the earthen pot is used, and many other practices like this. They said that the clothes would go generation to generation, and they will be dependent on the emotion of the person. If supposingly it's someone's marriage clothing, then it would go to the daughter or the daughter-in-law. But if it is their casual wear, they might give it to the maid, and it's based on the amount of emotion that is attached to the thing. And eventually also, after multiple generations have used it, it will still be used as a doormat or as a cleaning cloth, and will never be discarded in the waste. So, and also what we found was that they, by engaging in such activities, people felt a lot of satisfaction and felt happy. They had enriching conversations with their friends, and they thought that this gives them a possibility of a dialogue to change someone's mindset and to move to more sustainable practices. It gave them good health and boosted their egos. The recommendation from this study is that more awareness campaigns could be done. The intrinsic and extrinsic motivations of the individuals could be tapped. We could address the barriers and misconceptions. We could come up with technological driven solutions, and we could integrate cultural values and spiritual teachings. The implications for this study, for the academics, the implication is that the existing theories have been confirmed in this study, and a comprehensive model of sustainable behavior has been provided, and the existing studies have been validated through the mixed method research, which is seldom done in literature. As regard to the policy and governance, laws relating to sustainable business practices could be introduced, waste management systems could be brought in, regenerative initiatives could be taken up, more environmental campaigns could be done, community engagement activities could be done, and green labeling can be done for the green products. Regarding business practices, there is a huge opportunity for sustainable products in the market, and it's seen from the findings that Gen Z and millennials are really interested in buying such kind of products. New business models which are more circular in nature rather than linear can be introduced. Green supply chains could be made more greener. There is an opportunity for service industry relating to repairs, recollection, and refurbishing. And there are also opportunities for businesses in terms of spreading education and awareness about sustainability initiatives. The limitation of this research was that it happened mainly during COVID time, where people were already connecting COVID to the Anthropocene effect that we have done to the earth, and therefore their risk perceptions were high and their sustainability focus was high in this time period. Secondly, as the researcher was involved in the conduct of interviews, there could be researcher bias. All the participants were contacted online because the data collection happened during COVID years, 2 years of COVID, and therefore the views of the people who were not online cannot be presented in this study. And we contacted only Hindi and English speaking people, and this limits the generalizability of the study. And since the nature of the study is interdisciplinary, it could have benefited if it was a team project and multiple experts from different disciplines would have come up to the stage. And also, since it is a mixed method study, synthesizing the findings can suffer from subjectivity. In the future, specific industries and their consumers could be studied. We have studied individual angle, but business and government perspectives on this can also be studied. And new research methodologies like observational, ethnographic research, and experimental research designs could be done. Finally, I would like to conclude by saying that we need to move to more renewable sources of energy like biogas and solar energy. We need to repair and fix things. We need to restore the plants, save our rivers, clean our oceans. We need to feel responsible. Governments, businesses, individuals, each of us have a duty and responsibility towards the environment, and we must work together so as to bring these changes. Also, we need to develop more respect for flora and fauna, appreciate the role of nature in humans' lives. We need to rethink our consumption and examine our habits. And also, we need to reimagine the ways in which production can be done. We need to move away from cradle to grave model to cradle model. And we need to reconnect with the nature and develop a deeper appreciation towards the nature. That's all. These are the publications. I have 2 UGC Care publications, and one is in revision stage in Scopus Q1 journal. I have done 5 conferences, of which one of them has got Best Paper Award. Apart from this, I have also taken up some extended research projects like sustainable fashion apparel, sustainable luxury, plant-based meat, sustainable cosmetics, electric vehicles, sustainable lifestyles, and electronic gadgets. All these works have been presented in international conferences. Sustainable fashion paper has won Best Paper Award, and this has been published in ABDC and UGC Care journal. Sustainably luxury paper is in revision in Web of Science journal, and plant-based meat paper is already published in a UGC Care journal. Thank you. Finally, I would like to thank Swami for always being my guiding light in this research journey. I would like to thank the administration of Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, who have been there channelizing me towards it. I would like to thank my research supervisor, Dr. Sai Manohar, and joint research supervisor, Dr. B. Chandrasekhar, and also my research advisor, Dr. Soumya Shivkumar. I would like to thank all the present and past directors, deans, and HODs who have always been there and have extended their support and encouragement towards me. I would like to thank the reviewers and editors of the journals who have helped to improve the quality of the work. I would like to thank the examiners of my thesis with whose insights I have actually benefited and improved my work. I would also like to thank the conference organizers and the panelists who have given their insights and viewpoints and helped me to improve in my research acumen. I would like to thank all my colleagues who have always pushed me, always asked me about the progress of my research, and always kept me motivated. I would like to thank the entire Anantapur campus for always being there and positively pushing me forward towards it. And I would also like to thank my family who have always been my well-wishers. Thank you, Sairam.
Thank you, Mrs. Akanksha, for that very wonderful presentation. We will now move into the Q&A session. As per the protocol, we have a way by which this Q&A session will happen. So we will start with our external examiner, Professor Prakya, for your questions at the beginning.
Congratulations. Nice piece of work. I hope you enjoyed doing it.
Yes, sir.
So, you focused on this one stakeholder in this game. That's the consumer.
Yes, sir.
what is your sense of proportion of consumers who are actually put the idea of sustainable consumption into practice? Do you think that's a significant proportion?
So it's not significant proportion, but the next generation, like the millennials and Gen Z, they are very active on social media, and there are a large number of social media influencers, and also the celebrities like the Bollywood and Hollywood celebrities are going towards these practices, and therefore this has become something which is very trending today. And if not for the environment, people want to stay up into the fashion, and they like to do things which make them in the society to appear as a person of taste and as a person of aesthetics, and therefore they may have different inclinations why they would like to engage in these activities. But I surely believe that large proportion of people are moving towards it, at least the educated lot. And as regard to the uneducated lot, they are already sustainable because of the culture, because of the history, traditions, and they actually do not generate, they actually are not using the minimum resources which are allotted to them as per the WHO. But we are the ones who are actually consuming more in their share also, and it's required from the educated society only.
But if it's significant, then you would see the other stakeholders also getting into it. You should see uh, somebody like, say, the business community offering more and more such products, right? But we don't see that. So is it just talk, cheap talk? Celebrities can easily talk about it. Do they actually go from a larger house to live in a smaller house? Do you see actually actual instances of people acting on it? It's one thing to espouse this value,
Yes, sir.
but do you actually see them acting on it? And are they willing to make the trade-off? Because say a green product naturally would probably come at a higher price.
Yes, sir.
Are people willing to pay that? I mean, I don't see. Can you tell me one example of a successful such product?
Sir, actually,
which is mainstream.
yes. Yes, so
Which is mass.
Patagonia is a brand which is a $1 billion business, and they advertise. I can show you a slide on this. So they advertise like this: don't buy this jacket if you don't need. So they sell jackets and they say don't buy this jacket, and they offer services like reduce, repair, reuse, recycle. They believe in these values, and they say that you bring your old jacket and we will repair and give it to you. If you don't need a new jacket, don't buy one. And they are now moving more towards a service oriented business rather than a production oriented business. And this is a $1 billion business. There is a book by name $1 billion Businesses, Green Giants, and there are many such businesses who have actually adopted the path of sustainability. And also what we see in India is that these consumers today are not brand loyalists anymore. And if somebody comes up and says that I have more sustainable product, it is more organic, it's good for your health, it's good for your future, then they like to go for it. They do not see the price. I think it depends more on the public value of the product, like how they can talk about it in the society and how they can show their choices in the society when they engage in conversations with their friends, and because of that they don't mind paying the extra price for it.
Good.
In,
So,
in fact, what sir was trying to highlight was that as a future research work, these type of examples
Yes, sir.
in the Indian context, if they are highlighted either in the
Yes,
form of case studies or in the form of research publications, they will be very valuable.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir.
yeah. So I just wanted your sense of what is stopping the other stakeholders.
Yes, sir.
So there is this example, right? What is stopping, if indeed there is such an attractive market,
Yes,
then you
sir.
should see not just one odd example, right? And you should see actually many people getting into it. Market,
Yes, sir.
they are, the other stakeholders, they respond to the market, right?
Yes, sir.
If people want sustainable consumption, then there'll be, you know, enough people jumping in and saying, okay, I'm ready to offer something which is sustainable. But you don't see too many of them. So perhaps, as he's saying, you know, there may be some merit in focusing on what is stopping the spread of the diffusion of this idea,
Yes,
right?
sir.
It's very obvious to everybody. And what is stopping people from, consumers, this primary stakeholder, from actually putting it into practice? It's very easy to talk about it.
Yes, sir. So the
Some
younger
odd
generation
occasion-
is.
I know, I agree with you. I think the younger generation, for example, many such things, right? They are more, they're more active. I mean, they do put it a little bit more into practice than the
Yes,
others.
sir. Yes, sir.
But it remains to be seen what happens to them as they grow older.
Yes, sir.
Some of it comes from, you know, when they say if you're young and you're not a communist, you don't have a heart. And if you're old and you're a communist, you don't have a head. Right? So it remains to be seen whether they've actually internalized this. My question is more in terms of then you should see many more, the other stakeholders coming into it. You don't see much, see this whole neoliberal perspective that
Yes,
the
sir.
world has adopted.
Yes.
For example, if you take another, you talk about policy and all that. We don't see much effort from there.
Yes, sir.
Do you see any reduction in, in building? Why do you need to travel so much, right? If you just take the 20 years, it
Yes,
took me
sir.
31 hours today, and this is probably, and the guy tells me I was really lucky. But I used to do it in 25 minutes, 20 years ago. And that just because of the new things that have come up. So,
So
I'm just
actually,
wondering, what does the business get
yes.
by doing this? See, because the consumer is driven by his values and attitudes and so on, and a larger goal. You know, he may have a larger goal, which allows him to, at least in part, to address questions that you're raising. But it's not very clear what is the, why should a firm be like that? What is it, we talked about this many times. Why should a firm, for example, have values of any sort? Is it an entity like us? Does it have any, other than profit, what drives it? These are some things, the larger point I'm trying to make is, while this green shoots are rising, perhaps there's more, from a research perspective, it could be very interesting to look at what is stopping it.
Okay.
There
Yes,
are
sir.
things that aid it. I mean, and this is cyclical.
Yes,
So
sir.
you've got theory will hold. And when something is excessive, then there'll be a pushback.
So
But
like
other
you
than that,
said,
is there, yeah.
price is a factor.
Price is a factor.
Yes,
Total
sir.
environment homes, I was just seeing on the way I saw one here. It's an active example. It's an example of, if anything, if a home is sustainable, but it is like, I think, almost 70% more than a comparable, sorry.
Yeah.
70% higher than a,
Yes,
than a
madam, we'll
comparable.
come back to you, ma'am. Just kindly, if you can wait for a moment, we'll just come to you.
So there is a lot of, from a research perspective, what is blocking the other stakeholders from getting into it? Neither do I see any governments, right, actively pursuing this. None of this development agenda
Yes, sir.
I see much of a break on. Europe is a little bit more into this. They talk a little bit about this. But otherwise we don't see a deviation from this Charvaka kind of an idea that these things are good to talk about. Definitely individuals will do it. But I just wonder if that proportion is always going to remain small. Just to, play the devil's advocate. So perhaps you should look at, these research things, right? What you started, it's actually too much what you're trying to do. So many questions you're trying to ask and assess. So I see it more as an agenda for research for life. PhD is just one
Yes,
part, right?
sir, definitely.
You just draw an artificial boundary. So going forward, you may find it interesting to look at what is it that is stopping these things. Just a thought, not
Thank
a
you, sir. Thank you
comment
for
as
your
such.
observation. Do you have any response, madam? Anything like to tell
I
me?
will definitely take it up, sir. It's an interesting question to ask, and maybe in the next research and the PDF, I will definitely like to.
Thank you. Uh, let's now go to the, as per the protocol, let's just go to the research advisor, Professor Soumya Shivakumar. Kindly please come in and we'll be happy to hear you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sairam. First of all, Akanksha, you did an amazing job in presenting. It's not easy to stand in front of an august audience, especially Swami, and to be able to speak so coherently. Good job on that. And I appreciate everybody who is assembled here in order to encourage Akanksha and the rest of the research team. And the questions that have been posed, especially the main question, saying that yes, it's easy for a consumer to be able to engage this way, but where are the other stakeholders, is a very poignant and a very important question. Whereas, where is the government? Where is the private industry? Where is the rest of the world on this? Is an absolutely important question. And it's not just an agenda, as rightly said, for a lifetime, but probably lifetimes of many of us put together. Therefore, I completely acknowledge and appreciate the question being said. But as was rightly mentioned, we draw these artificial boundaries not only for just the PhD, but even the terminology that we use. For example, you started off, Akanksha, with, I think, with one of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. You briefly touched on it, but there are 3 such goals which are all interrelated with each other. One has got to do with consumption, which is, we want to be sustainable, we want to be green, we want to be all of those. The other one's got to do with production and innovation on the other side, which is something the consumer does not do. Maybe there is derived demand, but it is something that industry, private and public, does. What is interesting is, while it's the same 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, one of them we call as being sustainable, the other one, and green, and the other one we call as frugal innovation. So the terminology, the lack of the connection in research in terminology is basically what I think is the disconnect that we are seeing. And because Akanksha will continue to work with me and with Dr. Chandrasekhar, with Dr. Chandru, what I see is that eventually we will all start working on frugal innovation and make these connections to show there are very, very big. Jugaad is basically an Indian concept, right? So frugal innovation is the birthplace of it is India. We can put a probe in Mars for half the cost of what it took them to make Interstellar or any of those Hollywood movies. So what I see is that if we can make those connections happen, not only just in how we look at things, but also in the terminology, we will actually open ourselves up to the other stakeholders and what they are doing as well.
Thank you, ma'am, for your observations. Any responses from your side?
Yes, I would love to work with ma'am on these issues. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for all those wonderful observations. Just going again. Next, any observations from Dr. Chandrasekhar, the co-guide, before we go to the guide?
Sairam, everybody. Congratulations, Akanksha ma'am, for. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Congratulations for a wonderful presentation. And as Soumya ma'am very nicely pointed out, what you have taken up, and also how Srinivas Prakasa pointed out, what you have taken up is a tremendously broad area of work. And I think we have to, in the first few years of the research, you have very carefully chosen the scope to build the foundation on. And very clearly, as pointed by the papers that are lined up on review and the PDF objectives that are continually motivating you, this is quite an enriching possibility for you to keep this up. And also, as you touched upon Swami's teachings and our ancient culture, which has always been this way, and Swami constantly emphasizing that India would be a resurgent power of sorts, echoing the inner power of spirituality as an operationalizable life force, not just as a concept. And I think in that context also, what you could do as research in the coming years as well could add enormous validity to the scientific world, where spirituality is not just a concept, it's not just a teaching, but it is something that can transform an individual life and therefore collectively transform society as well. So, in many ways, I see a rich set of possibilities ahead of you, both as a researcher and as an individual, and to contribute to what Swami has primarily established our institution for. So, congratulations and wish you all the best for what is ahead.
Thank you, Brother Chandru. Any responses
Thank you,
from your
sir.
side?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, our after the research guide, as per protocol, we'd like to go to the HOD. Excuse me, Dr. Padmavati Madam, I did not introduce you nor mention you at the initially at the beginning of this. Kindly excuse me. Request Dr. Padmavati, our HOD, to kindly give her observations. Any questions also?
Thank you, sir. First,
Madam, you are muted. Yeah.
yeah. So first, I would like to congratulate Akanksha Aggarwal, and I would like to say a few words about Akanksha. She has been a great she was showing a great perseverance and commitment throughout her journey, and she has seen up and down during her research progress, but still she was so much committed and she was working very hard to complete her thesis. And so I wish her that this achievement may open doors to even more greater research opportunities and success in her career. And I have only one question to Akanksha. She was talking about, in the model which she was presenting, she was talking about the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is something which is always temporary. And since our topic is on sustainability, I would like to know, like, what are the intrinsic factors that she has identified that can motivate or drive the attitude and finally the action.
Yes, ma'am.
You are responding, no, ma'am?
Yes, sir. I'm just turning on the slide. Sairab ma'am, thank you so much for your kind words. Regarding the internal intrinsic motivation, I think the major motivation which drives their behavior is the self-fulfillment. When they lead sustainable lifestyles, they feel a sense of purpose and a sense of achievement. And that is the driving force for them to consistently continue these sustainable activities. Apart from that, many of the respondents are parents today and they worry about their children, and that's why they want to do something about it so that they can give the same earth to their progeny which they have actually cherished themselves. They are also concerned about their personal health and well-being, which is another driving factor. And also, what we found was that they share a sense of connection with the nature. They have a love for the environment, for the nature, and they revere Earth as Mother Earth because of the Indian cultural values and their upbringing. And this is another reason which motivates them to do what they are doing. And also, since these are sustainability influencers, they get a lot of recognition and validation when they post such things on social media. A lot of people appreciate them, and a lot of people tell them that you have been an inspiring person in my life, and my life has changed because I have learned a lot of things from you. And that also drives them towards the sustainable journey that they are pursuing.
Thank you, ma'am, for the
Thank you.
insightful observations. Let me just go towards myself. Again, congratulations and a wonderful presentation. Good work that has been done. With that, let me just ask two questions. The first question is, of course, a little research related. You did talk about the importance of spirituality in affecting and motivating sustainable consumption and sustainable consumer behavior. While you did quote about the cultural background across various religions and as well as the Indian ethos, I would just like to know from you, is there a research background to this? Are there research studies which have identified telling that indeed spirituality is an important motivator as well as a background for sustainable consumption? That's my first question.
Yes, sir.
So you will elaborate upon this for a moment. My second question, of course, is a little practical question, quite straightforward. Assume you are standing in a supermarket observing the customers. Two customers enter simultaneously at the same time into the supermarket, and you know based on your past experience that one of them is a sustainable customer. Other person, you don't know whether he is a sustainable customer or not. Let us assume he does not get affected by sustainability. How do you think both these two customers will behave? Will they behave the same or will they behave differently in the supermarket? These are my two questions.
Yes, sir. So, to answer your first question about existing literature on spirituality, sir, I've mentioned this in my research paper also. When I went on to do the literature review and find connections between spirituality and consumption, what I found was that there was a lot of overlap between spirituality and religiosity. People were actually mentioning about what their religion mentions about consumption and how to make purchase choices and consumption choices based on what religion teaches them. And they were, though they called it as spirituality, but like we can challenge that because the meaning of spirituality is slightly different from the meaning of religion. In religion, specific guidelines are laid down regarding the behavior, whereas in spirituality, it is humans' exploration within and outside about how he wants to act and how he wants to behave. So, spirituality in that sense is different from religion, but it has been mixed up in the literature. Even as regard to the religion, there are not many studies, and as regards spirituality, this is a novel contribution this research has actually made, and therefore I would say that the literature in this area is still underdeveloped. Coming to the second question, sir, that you have asked. So, a sustainable consumer often looks for the product labels, and they actually search whether the product is green or not. And some of them who are really well informed, they go back into the supply chain. They know that a lot of greenwashing is taking place, and they would actually study the thing in deep, and then they will make their purchase decisions. And they somewhere also act as influencers in their lives because they want to represent what kind of choices that they make to others in order to have a sense of self-esteem and tastefulness and things like that. Whereas a non-sustainable consumer would not really reject a sustainable product. He would consider both sustainable and unsustainable products together. And coming from the school of economics, I think a man makes a rational choice. They would look at what gives them more utility and satisfaction, or otherwise it could be through the social practice, that regularly consumption habit that they have been using. Based on that, he will make his consumption choice.
Thank you. Opening up the discussion, we'll start with faculty members who are online. Any faculty member online, kindly raise your hand and you may like to ask your question.
Sairam.
Sairam, I'm welcome. Sorry, I did not know you were there. Welcome, Professor Suma and Dr. Subhash. Thank you.
So, Akanksha, it was really, as I have read and heard your work, and it's really interesting. I just wanted to highlight one part of it. See, when you look at the motivations of green consumers, there is high degree of aspiration. That is very true. They are affected by the broad themes which you said is also very true. But in the end, it's a trade-off between their desires versus their, in terms of lifestyle and the products they consume. We are willing to go through a certain trouble to what we believe in, but how deep is that belief that you are willing to go how many miles in order to fulfill that deep aspiration is where the trade-off comes. Because it means that you have to be willing to live a much simpler life, possibly. It will also mean that you may do away with a certain number of products. It will also mean that you have to reduce your footprint as a whole, which means consumption has to be reduced to a great extent. It literally means an ascetic life to an extent. So, this trade off is a very difficult trade off. That is why you will always have a knot when it comes to consumerism and spirituality, and which is also probably one of the reasons why industry also does not take it as seriously, knowing very well that consumption patterns will dominate any other deeper into later to understand exactly what kind of things promote that. And definitely, if the movement becomes much wider, which we hope out of necessity it will happen, if not out of goodwill, then this will happen in the future. But that is where the actual knot is in my limited understanding of it, and you can go further into it if you want to. So I feel those kind of knots you can identify now with this rich background that you have, and then you can go deeper into those, and they will have much more value to offer to this area. Thank you.
Thank you for your observations, ma'am. Any responses from your side?
Ma'am, in response to what you have just said, which is so true, based on the literature that I have read, what I found was that the rich people who have already have had experienced all the different kinds of things, it is easier for them to adopt voluntary simplicity. They are downsizing on things, and they are showing some kind of aesthetic sense in living with minimal. They promote ideas like less is more, and they have gone to minimalism and such kind of things. They have moved to tiny houses. They have left their large houses and moved to tiny houses. Some people live in caravans, and there are new kind of consumption trends that are coming up in that aspect. But the literature says that for the aspirational lot, which is the majority of the population, they have not had tasted these things. They want to consume, they are aspirational, and therefore they will continue to buy things. It's easier for those who are already satisfied, who have already experienced, to downsize. But for the people who have never experienced these things, they really aspire to consume more. Only thing that can be done here is that we can alternate the consumption. We can encourage them to adopt more sustainable products as compared to the unsustainable ones.
So, did you come across guilt also as a big motivating factor in the consumption process?
I haven't explored that, ma'am. I did not see that.
If you have high aspirations and you
Yes,
can't give up, then there's a huge guilt area, right? Which will drive.
yes,
So maybe the high pricing acceptance is coming out of guilt.
yes, yes,
Possible.
possible.
Those kind of things may be
Actually,
there.
the thing is that, ma'am, like when we ask them questions or when we interview them, they're not open to go so transparent to expose that side of their individuality. They might be
Yeah.
suffering from such things, but then without any evidence, we cannot really, say that these people are guilty of. Uh,
Yeah, of course.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else online faculty members would like to ask some questions?
I just wanted to say congratulations, Akanksha. It was a good presentation.
Thank you, Subhash. Going further here on the offline mode, first starting with the faculty members. Any of the faculty members would like to ask observations, any questions? Yes, Prasad.
Sairam ma'am, congratulations. It was really wonderful to see the presentation. And thanks for sharing your journey. It cleared a lot of bottlenecks in the mind. One question I have. Somewhere in the presentation, you mentioned about sustainable groups versus non-sustainable group. how is that? I mean, you chose somebody who is doing like composting vagera, right?
sir.
They
Yes,
are
sir.
part of sustainable group.
Yes.
Somebody who is going for trekking, etc., and you label them as non-sustainable group, if I'm right.
Yes, sir. We have stayed away from labeling anyone as non-sustainable. It's just that their inclinations and the purpose is different for being on that group. They may be indulging in sustainable activities also, but which is not the higher purpose. Or they are not like motivated by that as much as these sustainable consumers are.
Okay, so to have this kind of categorization for all the groups, just to categorize as sustainable and non-sustainable, do we have some literature support for that?
So, sir, calling someone non-sustainable has been a thing which literature has also refrained from. This is actually a question which has been raised in my paper revision also, to be really honest. So I think I am now modifying it to sample 1 and sample 2, because any kind of usage of words or labels that we put, they can cause issues. But there are, in the literature, there is a very popular author by name Tim Jackson. He talks about good life versus goods life, and he says that he calls the sustainable people as the people living a good life, versus non-sustainable, or the other group as living the goods life, who are interested in higher consumption. So, but then there is not much literature that has been established in this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Sairam, Akanksha, good work. Congratulations. I just got one question on, because it's all about sustainable consumer, right? And you're talking about a 15 to 24 years group, almost 64% of your sample, if I remember right. Right, 15 to 24 years. The question is, you have put up the demographic. Did you go back and do a customer profiling in terms of what are their behaviorals?
Sorry, sir. I did not understand your question.
On the consumer, right? The study is all about the consumer behavior and about the consumer.
Yes.
And 15 to 24 years, it's almost 64% of your sample, of your overall sample, right? That's a demographic. The age group is a demographic. Did you do a profiling on the behavioral of who they are?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think you're talking about the qualitative research.
The quantitative.
So in the quantitative,
What's your, let's go back to the slide
20
on.
to 25. It starts with 20 to 25.
Okay. Just go back to the slide.
Is it?
The other slide, what you showed, the earlier one somewhere.
Okay. It's mentioned
Yeah,
15 to
20.
24.
That's 64%.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, they were majority, if you see, majority of them are actually postgraduates.
Okay.
Here, if you see, 51% of the population is postgraduates, and almost 186 of them are 44% of the people are graduates. So most of the data has, though it says 15, like it's a 10-year
That's fine.
thing.
That's fine. The question
Yes,
is, the question is,
If
the
I-
behavioral profiling
Yes,
is:
sir.
are they the user, a buyer, or are they influencer, or are they gatekeeper, or have they just given you a view, a perception view? Yeah.
Such segmentation of consumers was out of the scope of the study.
Okay.
Whereas it can actually make
could
a
give you a
great
depth. It could give you a
study.
depth. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Given that the vast number of things that we
Yeah,
were
true,
studying,
true.
it
Taken,
was
point
not
taken.
possible to
Point taken.
accommodate
Another
too many
question, the
objectives.
second last question, something about awareness.
Yes, sir.
You asked a question, part of your quantitative research, these consumers got the awareness from, right? And you've gone,
Qualitative,
family is one. And how did you measure this awareness?
Sir, so
The
this...
first, I suffer from eco-anxiety.
This analysis is actually done on a software called as MaxQDA 24.
How did you measure awareness?
Yes, sir.
Software
Okay,
is the tool.
sir, it's not it's a qualitative study, sir.
Okay.
We don't measure this. When we ask them a qualitative question about how did you become sensitive to sustainable living, then they give a response. And
Right,
what we do is we analyze it on a software called Max QDA.
No, let's not get into tool. I'm
Yes,
asking
sir.
a question. Let's say even if it's a qualitative research, you got markers. Right?
Yes, sir.
And one of the ways how you could have a marker for awareness can be recognition, recall, top of the mind, dominance.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
If a particular age group comes back and says, you give a clue and then they're recognizing it.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Or for another clue, they're able to recall. Or for some, it's top of the mind. For some, it's very dominant. Right?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And with these markers, you could always come back and say, these are the people who have a very dominant view on consumer sustainability. Just a point I wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
add to this.
So we have not segregated
Sure.
them
Okay.
in that depth. We
Right.
have just studied
Okay,
how
okay,
they become
right.
aware about
Sure,
sustainable
okay,
living.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else present here? Sir, you like to ask? Rajiv?
Mrs. Akanksha, it's a very good work. I appreciate. I have two questions. One is the life cycle of a person. You have identified that younger generation is driven more by fear psychosis towards sustainability rather than the older generation who are driven by the values and spirituality. Do you think this kind of fear psychosis is sustainable, or how it can be turned into positive factors so as to motivate them positively? That is my number one question. Number two, did you study, like in your questionnaire or in your interview, did you study the impact of gender on the sustainable consumer behavior? These are my two questions.
Yes, sir. So for the first question about the fear, what like the literature says about this younger generation is that they want to lead a life which is full of purpose, and they want to bring some kind of change to the world with their presence, and therefore they need some kind of a push or some kind of an area where they can actually come up with this kind of self gratification, and that can be a major reason why they are adopting sustainable living. Other than that, these consumers, most of the interview is mentioned about the eco anxiety that they are undergoing or facing. When they see the water tap running, they cannot control, they become anxious about it, or they cannot see a lot of littering around, and they cannot see the site of landfill. And so these are the issues that they are facing because of the severe risk perception that they have come across, or they have seen on videos or something which has really deeply touched them. And so far they have been trying to do something about it in order to satisfy themselves and to stay positive and to stay away from those eco anxieties that they are facing. So that is what we found in our research. Before this, I wasn't even aware about eco anxiety or anything, and when we actually spoke to people, I got to know that this is real. And I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat the second question? Gender. Yes, sir. So we did like as sir advised also, we did binary logistic regression. So for measuring the impact of gender or any demographic factor on the consumption, I think we need a large data set. Here we did not find any much results after doing such analysis. We do not find a good model fit, or these factors like earnings or gender or marital status, they failed to predict whether a person will lead a sustainable life or lead a non-sustainable life. And so our analysis does not support this. And there is a war in the literature which is going on. Many people have mentioned about the women and the female being more prone to the risks of environmental hazards as they do cooking at home, and they are exposed to the carbon that's released from LPG, and children to be more exposed to these things. And they have also said that women are more sensitive to environmental, they have greater environmental concern, whereas there are other literature or statistics which have said that they could not find any support in this area in their statistical answers. And therefore we cannot, I think it's too early to conclude based on gender about this issue.
Thank you, sir. Rajiv, you wanted to
Sairam Akanksha, very nice work.
Thank you.
Of course, you have ring-fenced your work to include only the individual's approach towards sustainable consumerism and not the business and the government. Of course, they feed off each other. And you have in detail studied about the drivers of intrinsic and extrinsic drivers that shape the attitudes and finally the practices, and also looked at the barriers to sustainable consumerism from the lens of people who are willing to be a sustainable consumer. Yes. But if the objective is to study sustainable consumerism, I was wondering, did your sample also have people who did not have an inclination towards sustainable consumerism and explore the drivers to not being a sustainable consumer, and thereby probably understand where the focus need to be in order to make the world a more sustainable place?
Sir, in this research, we wanted to make contribution to the sustainable development goal of sustainable consumption, and the aim of the study was to find how we can get some findings and inputs for the government and businesses to drive sustainability related initiatives. But the question that you have raised was out of the scope of the study. It can really make an interesting study for my future research, definitely.
thank you. Chandrahas.
Sarah ma'am, first of all, congratulations on a very well done research. So this is a further comment to a comment that Professor Prakya made. I think there are a lot of interesting pointers in ancient Indian literature which could aid in your future research with respect to sustainable consumption. One of which is Swami's own framework, which is where Swami talks from about from Vyashti, Samashti, Srishti, Parameshti. Wherein he clearly says that individual transformation only can lead to societal transformation, and where God or God-fearing nature acts as a central driver. That's one framework you could consider. And the second thing is the ancient Advaita literature, where there are, one aphorism which clearly indicates this is the metaphor of a dog chewing a bone, where it thinks that it is getting the blood from the bone, but actually it's its own blood because the bone has cut its mouth. So this literature talks about how you derive happiness from your own self and not from something external, while materialism is something opposite. So can that act as an antidote? And thirdly, we often find, we celebrated Diwali recently, we find that people just leave the crackers as it is. There is a general apathy towards environment. But on the other hand, we find some cultures like the very good example being Japan, where wherever they go, they do not litter the place. That's the first step towards and they actually, any implementation by the government to segregate waste actually happens, right? So that what kind of cultural influence can act as a driver to sustainable consumption? These are all interesting questions that you could consider for your future research. Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely. Now that we have Center of Sustainability and Center of Satyasai Studies, I would definitely like to even collaborate with all of you on these issues, and we can take this forward. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. After finishing the faculty members who are present online as well as offline, now let us go to the visiting faculty members who are present. We'll start with the offline visiting faculty members. We'll start with Mr. Yajnanarayanan. Mr. Yajnanarayanan is a visiting faculty at the Brindavan campus. He is an expert in the insurance industry. Mr. Yajnanarayanan.
Nothing. I mean, I'm not a research academic background. I'm coming from insurance industry where they often do some surveys within the company. One thing we may be familiar, net promoter score.
Yes.
In similar line, I happened to listen to Swami Dayananda Saraswati's one public lecture where he talks about contribution versus consumption, or consumption versus contribution, where he says that every individual, he puts it this way, every individual till the age of 2022 is a consumer, and every individual after 60, 65, he is a consumer. The active contribution to the society comes in the group of 25 to say 60, 65, that 40 years. Now, whatever he has, that individual has to contribute, that's the space, time he has to contribute. And put it in another way, they also say that in a lifespan, if you say about 8 hours goes into sleep, if you put it that way. So that the time frame available to contribute is very limited. So what's the individual, how much in his lifetime he contributes versus how much he consumes? I'm just connecting to that net promoter scores. Can you, since you have a Center for Sustainable Development, why don't you develop an index of net contribution score, yes, like net promoter score? It's for the individual. It can be even adapted for a business for them to evaluate how much they have contributed. That's enough. I mean, yes, I'm not bringing the contribution. As long as they let that be consumption be any level, as long as their contribution is above that consumption, it's a profit for the society. This is one. Only one more.
Yes, sir.
I mean, sustainability is not a topic of popular conversation.
Yes, sir.
I mean, anytime nobody is going to discuss in the morning what is the pollution level. Rather, we are happy to talk about why Trump won or why Kamala lost. That's our favorite topic. But all of us are able to connect to your topic because it is something we know, that it is something very much related. I was able to connect. No, when I look back in my, I remember, I think as I was talking, again coming to the topic of consumption versus contribution, I remember in the second standard, ideal family is a topic. Father, mother and 2 children. There one line comes very clearly. No, those days, 100 rupees was the salary. No, father earns that 100 rupees and the wife ensures that the expenditure is within 100. That's one of the characters, I mean, one of the key highlights in that particular lesson. How can these lessons of the sustainability can be integrated into the very, I mean, at the childhood level education? I do not know what is the, whether you have the topic called ideal family. I do not know how the lessons are. But can any possibility of integrating these kind of sustainability values within the educational curriculum at the very primary school level? I mean, these are the thought process.
Your responses, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So regarding the first thing that you said, I feel this is a very different and new lens to this whole study, which actually can be practically taken up. As you have suggested, I will definitely keep it in my mind as one of the studies that I would like to do tomorrow. And coming to the second thing that you mentioned, some of it is happening in some of the schools already. And when we interviewed these individuals, Gen Zs, they said the formal education did make an impact on them. But this is also an also a suggestion from my studies also, that more educational programs and awareness campaigns are definitely required for each of us to be able to make every small contribution that we can.
Thank you, madam.
Yes, sir.
We now go to Professor Raja Shankaran. He is a professor at the CMS Business School, associated with the Jain University. Today he is available here. Welcome, sir, and your comments as well as questions.
Thank you very much, Sairam. Lots of work it seems that you have done as part of your research. It's a quite wide topic as well. So I would congratulate you for the efforts that you have put in as part of your research. I will stick my questions related to the context of your study, though I have lots of questions, but I'll stick to only 3 questions based upon the context of your study. Number one, what I see is the chronology of the studies that you have done. The first one, what you did is a quantitative study using CBSEM. Second is you said you are exploring the factors, hence you have used PLSM. Then third is a qualitative study.
Yes.
So I want to understand the rationale behind why you have done in this kind of sequence and not in the reverse order. Because the reverse makes more sense. I've not gone through the details about your thesis, but looking at your slides is what I can come up with this. That's question one. Question number two, you have used various factors based upon different models that you have talked about. You have shown some of the conceptual models as well. I do not understand which of those hypotheses were supported or not supported as part of your study. That's the second one. Though you would have covered it as part of your thesis, I have not seen it, so I'm asking you based upon my curiosity to understand whether they were supported from the context of the sample that you have collected for the Indian perspective or not. The third question is, you have done your third study as a qualitative study. How did you bring in rigor as part of your qualitative study? If you have got any questions, please ask. I'm more than happy to clarify what it means. Yeah?
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your questions. To answer the first one, order of research. So there wasn't any particular order that has been followed. We have done these studies. It's just in the presentation. There are the research questions are put as 4 research questions, but it was largely a mixed method study to understand.
No, there is a rationale behind when you should use qual first followed by quant next, or quant first followed by quant next.
So, sir, here we have used a convergent parallel mixed method research design, which does not require any order. The qualitative and quantitative study can happen simultaneously, and the results and outcomes of both are taken and compared together. That is the research methodology which has been adopted here. I understand you are talking about sequential mixed method research design, where it can be exploratory or explanatory in nature, and based on that, qualitative and quantitative is.
No, that is one part of it, of what the concept talks about.
Yes, sir.
Here I have elaborated specifically saying that you have first used CBSEM in order to come out with the factors and test the factors. Your second study was exploring the factors, and the third one is a qualitative study which is in a reverse direction. So I want to understand your rationale. So I'm not going through the bookish definition of it. Yeah, that we can discuss later on.
So, as in my PhD journey, I'm also learning how to do the research. So, in the first stage, I tried to take the literature, understand the literature, and try to test it in Indian context. And that's why the first study is about testing. But even though after testing, the results are quite similar to what results are already available in literature, the study does not make any contribution to the literature. It does not bring anything new, and therefore an exploratory research is required. And that's when we went and thought that in an Indian context, spirituality could be a factor which could be something which is not so studied, and it can make a novel contribution. And that's when we actually drafted the whole questionnaire and conducted the survey and found the results to be really positive. And there was strong relationship found between spirituality and and green purchase behavior, and also between the spirituality and the attitudes, and between spirituality and the purchase intention.
Yeah, okay, I understand. You
so
went through a learning curve.
I would suggest that she can meet you at a later time, connect offline in this, and so that she can gain some more insights into this. Yeah, please continue the other two questions that Sir asked.
Yes, sir. So second question was about which hypotheses have been supported and which have not been supported. In the first study, MNO, man-nature orientation and collectivism, were not very significantly related to purchase behavior, and that was the case in some of the literatural studies also, but it could be because large collective initiatives are not being taken up in India, and that could be a reason why it has not happened. In the next study on spirituality, none of the hypotheses were actually rejected, and in the third study we have only done t-tests and compared the happiness levels, and the fourth one is a qualitative study where there were no hypotheses as such.
That's it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
How did he
Yes,
bring
sir.
it?
So, with regard to the qualitative research, the analysis was done on MaxQDA software and word count. So, through.
Sir is asking in terms of validity.
Yes, sir. So we have contacted some experts and shown them the interview questions, and also sitting with those experts, I have actually shown them this kind of the analysis that I have done. This work was also presented in two platforms, one in IIM Shillong and one in the doctoral conference.
That's okay. I think you can build up this in the near future research.
Yeah,
That's
you
fine.
should be able to.
The themes that you extracted,
Yes,
you
sir.
got them checked, right, by the experts?
Yes, sir, through coding. Yes, sir. After coding was done, then we showed them to the experts and we identified whether these themes are fine, and it was also validated with the existing literature research papers that we found, and based on that these themes were made. Even the model is based on the
I
literature.
suggest to you at a later time, you
Yes,
can
sir.
get in touch with Sir,
Yes,
so that you can understand this. This is all a learning curve,
Yes,
so you
sir,
can
yes, sir.
understand this.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Anybody online
But,
visiting faculty?
I would say good job done. Lots of efforts put into this. It's a huge topic.
Thank you,
and
sir.
some of you, those who have already mentioned before me, the professors, it's a lifetime kind of thing, not just for an individual, but multiple ones. Definitely there'll be lots of things.
Any visiting faculty online would like to make any observations? Offline, others, anybody would like to make some observations? Online, others, anybody would like to make any observations? Thank you. With that, we officially close this technical part of the research defense. We'll request the candidate to kindly wait outside, little bit away. We'll call you in a few minutes back. Kindly wait outside. Kindly wait outside. The work is not yet completed. First of all, I thank everyone for being here, but as a protocol, it is also necessary to ensure that the PhD defense examination minutes are all correctly done. So the title of this thesis was Unveiling Sustainable Consumers in India, a Mixed Methods Approach to Understanding Motivation, Well-being and Behaviors. And this particular Viva did happen today at the Brindavan campus. So the chairperson was myself, Professor Shivakumar, the external examiner, Professor Srinivas Prakya, the HOD, Dr. Padmavati is a member, followed by Dr. Chandrasekhar, again the joint supervisor, a member, as well as Dr. Sai Manohar, the associate professor and currently the director of the Brindavan campus is also a member. He is the doctoral supervisor. So here are the minutes that I am just reading out, and I'll be requesting the members to kindly give their assent to that. First of all, Mrs. Akanksha Aggarwal presented in detail the salient features of the work done by her. Mrs. Akanksha Aggarwal answered satisfactorily the questions raised by the examiners in course of her presentation. In the presentation, Ms. Srimati Akanksha Aggarwal displayed mastery over the subject, originality of ideas and clarity of thought. And finally, this is the final sentence, based on the evaluation reports of the thesis and the performance of the candidate in the defense examination, the committee recommends her for the award of the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Management We'll start with Professor Srinivas Prakya, the external examiner member, with a yes or a no, sir.
Yes, yes.
We'll go to Dr. Padmavati, the HOD, a yes or a no.
Yes, sir.
We'll go to Dr. Chandrasekhar, the joint supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Finally, we go to Dr. Sai Manohar, the supervisor.
Yes.
And let me also give my assent, yes, for this particular wonderful work. We'll be signing it formally. This kindly call the candidate, sir. I'll request you as the external member to kindly tell her the decision and tell her that now she will be, from now onwards, she will be called as Dr. Akanksha Aggarwal.
Congratulations, Akanksha, for a job well done. Welcome. Now you're a full-fledged academic. But I must point out that, since you're in Swami's Institute, you must be aware that Swami used to tell us that, yeah, what PhD, purity, humility, devotion. So I guess that is the something that all of us that's the agenda for lifetimes. For the next 10, 20 years, sustainability, more research on that is agenda for lifetimes. Maybe for you, even in this life, you can get a PhD. That PhD from him also. Huh? Congratulations. Job well done.
Congratulations, Dr. Akanksha. Offering my humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet, I take this opportunity to thank everyone present here, thank everyone online for giving their very valuable inputs in making this PhD defense thesis really worthwhile, a wonderful learning experience for not only the candidate but for all of us present here. We are very grateful to Bhagavan for giving us this wonderful platform wherein we could all exchange our views, and as mentioned by everyone present here in this assembly, that sustainability is not just a short race. Sustainability is indeed a lifelong mission. It's a wonderful learning for every one of us. We thank Bhagavan for giving us this opportunity to participate in this particular program. We'll close with Om Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagavan Shri Satya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai.